Hello, you're watching the SimHanger channel. My name's Mark, the SimHanger for all things flight sim related. Now there's a lot of interest in the flight sim community in Honeycomb's Bravo Throttle Quadrant. I did a full hands-on review, so if you missed that video, I'll leave a link in the description notes below and also at the end of this video. Honeycomb had originally planned to ship this product late September into October, but have recently announced a number of delays. So, not all of us are going to get this before Christmas by the looks of it, and shipments will run well into January. I'm obviously not aware of the respective size of the various shipments, but looking at this, I think I can hazard a guess and say it's not going to be on the shelves of your local retailer and available for sale until sometime in February or perhaps even as late as March. My hands-on review video generated quite a number of queries and questions, and a fair few of those related to the setting of reverse thrusters. So in this, the first of two planned videos, we're going to be having a look at the default airliners in Microsoft Flight Simulator and how do we set the reverse thrust. I'll follow this up at a later date with one covering the props. Well, with that all out the way, let's get started. Before we get into the demonstrations and configuration guides, and if you got the Bravo Throttle Quadrant on pre-order or intend to get one, here are a few important points that you need to know. Of the 6 axes included with the throttle quadrant, you'll notice only 5 of them have electrical contact, and that's axes 1 through 5. The reason for this is with the commercial handles you get up to 4 throttles, each with its own reverser lever. So the reverser levers are treated as buttons and not as an axis. So axis number 6 is not really designed for throttles for the commercial handles. You've no doubt noticed that axis 2 and 3 have an additional contact point on them. When using the commercial handles, and depending on how many engines you're configuring for, thrust lever number 1 will go on axis 2 or 3. And commercial handle number 1 has a extra function, a red button, which typically could be configured as your toga button. Axis number 1 has contacts on it for the GA handles, as again throttle number 1 has a toga button on the side. Those buttons that have additional actuators make contact through pins in the base of the handle. The reverse range along the axis, or the point past the very clear and distinctive detent, is also treated as a button and configured accordingly, as are the reverse levers, their buttons as well as previously mentioned. We'll shortly be having a look at how we configured this for the 787. We'll also take a quick look at the 747, but the Jumbo's controls and configurations are much the same as the 787. The Airbus 320 is a little bit different as the throttle does have a physical reverse range. And we'll be looking at how we can set this up. This video does assume that you're familiar with how to configure peripherals. If not, in the description notes to this video I'll leave a link to my how-to guide series, and you'll be able to find further help and guidance there. But for now, let's dig into the Dreamliner. From the cockpit, let's hit escape and let's go to the controls section. And here we can quickly review a dedicated profile, Bravo 787, that I've already set up. And it's a fairly simple and straightforward configuration. I've set up my flap and spoiler axis as well as my throttle axis, and for each throttle axis I've also got a throttle decrease, and that's where my reverse levers come in. I've also got throttle cut mapped, but we'll cover that in more detail a little later on. So let's set up a new profile and I'll show you how this was configured. Let's just change the profile to the default profile, and as you can see it is currently blank, nothing is assigned. Changing the filter to all, it shows us that all the mappings are available to be configured. We'll just collapse the menus to make it easier to navigate. To set up a new profile, we go down to the Preset Manager. Let's give that a click. And a number of options are available to me to add a new one or to duplicate an existing one. For simplicity, I'm just going to duplicate. It prompts us to give this new profile a different name for easy identification, so I think I'll call it Bravo Throttle Quadrant Test. It should be noted that the configurator is still a little buggy and it's easier to set up from default, or that's my experience anyway. We've hit OK and we're ready to go. Nothing's currently assigned, so let's change it to all. We'll start by configuring the throttle axis, so down to Power Management and then to Throttle. We're now in the Throttle submenu and we're looking for Throttle 1 axis. Using the left mouse button, we click in the box, then click the top tab, Start Scanning. I'm now going to move power lever number 1 on my throttle. There we are, it picks it up. Joystick R, axis Z, validate, and we can see that that is now mapped. We can just check it. Yes, that all looks fine. Let's now go on to axis number 2 and do exactly the same thing. So we're looking for throttle 2 axis. Click on the box and we'll start scanning and move our second power lever up. There it is. Once again validate and then move it to check. Yes, it's moving through the full range. All good. We can now pop back into the simulator and see if it's worked. Apply and save and resume. Well, both throttle axes are working, but they're working in reverse, so we need to make a change. So back to the control section. We can leave the filter on assigned and just look into the power management and throttle and click reverse axis on throttle 1 and 2. Apply and save, and let's go and test it again. That's better. What's happening in the cockpit matches what's happening with the Bravo Throttle Quadrant. I'm happy with that. As the throttle's done, let's go back to the control panel and continue with our mappings. Let's now map our reverse thrust. Let's first change the filter to all so we can see everything that's available. Back down to power management and again throttle. And the action I'm looking for here is throttle 1 decrease. It's worthwhile pointing out at this stage that there are a number of different ways to configure this. If we go down to the bottom of the throttle section, we'll see there's a hold throttle reverse and toggle throttle reverse. However, I've found throttle 1 decrease is the simplest option. Click on the box, start scanning, and this time I'm going to move my reverse lever. I need to make an important point here when doing any configuration. I've moved my power lever up. Key 10 is recognized, but it stayed light gray. When I hit validate, there's nothing there. Nothing has been mapped. That's because in effect I've pushed the button in but not let it go. Let's do it again. I move the reverser up and now back down. It's no longer light grey, it's dark grey. Click validate and it records button 10. It's now mapped. Let's now do exactly the same for our second throttle reverse. That's button number 11, validate, and it's there. Apply and save, and let's go and check if it's worked. Both throttle axes are working as expected. Now let's put it into reverse. And we can see that it's now in reverse. All good. Let's now take it out of reverse, by pushing the reverser levers forward. To come out of reverse, it does require you to move the handle slightly for it to register that it's out of reverse. Let's do that again so we can see. Push the reversers forward and give it a small nudge and it comes out of reverse. And for many you may well be happy with that, but I find it a little bit irritating, so I've put in a throttle cut option. Back into the mappings, change the filter again to all. Let's consolidate the menus so we can get there a bit quicker. Back down to throttle, and I'm paging down to throttle cut. There it is, and I'm going to map that to the small red button on axis 1. And this will eliminate the need for me to nudge the throttles forward slightly to get out of reverse. So left click again. I am now going to press the button. It's button number 3030. That's now mapped, and we can go back and check if it's worked. Don't forget to apply and save. Let's bring the throttles back to idle and put it into reverse. I'm now going to push the reversers forward and just press the little red button on throttle number 1 and out she comes. No need to move the throttles to come out of reverse. Let's head back to the controls and let's continue and finish off the mappings by doing our flaps and our spoiler axis. Flaps and spoilers obviously not under power management but under our flight control surfaces and their secondary flight control surfaces. Let's kick off with the spoiler axis first of all. Again, left click in the box, and I'm now going to move the axis on the Bravo Throttle Quadrant. It's picked it up, joystick L, axis Y, validate, and there it is. Give it a test. Yep, moving through the full range. Happy with that. Now to set up the flap axis, there's a number of axes that are available. Flap axis 0 to 100%. But the minus to plus 100% worked best for me. Click in the box and move the axis again. Joystick L, axis Zulu. That's validated, so back to the cockpit and give it a test. That all seems to be working fine, so no problems there. I may need to adjust the sensitivity for the air brake. And now just a quick summary of the mappings that we've covered in this configuration. We've mapped the spoilers and the flaps, both throttle axis, and the reversers mapped to decrease throttle. We've also added an optional throttle cut option. Let's now move on and have a quick look at the jumbo jet. The 747 mappings are the same as the 787s, so no need to push the throttles past the detent to get into reverse. We're able to just use the reverse levers with it mapped as per the 787. So let's head into the controls menu and have a look at the mappings. Once again, I've chosen to have a separate profile for the 747. With a filter on assigned, we will expand the menu so we can see all the configurations. The only difference in the mappings is that the throttles, being 4 of them this time, are configured from axis number 2 through to 5 on the Bravo Throttle Quadrant, and each reverse lever has been mapped accordingly as before. What you're seeing here is me using the 787 profile on the A320neo, and everything's working fine with one exception. With the A320, the reversers in the real aircraft have a reverse range. The throttles are pushed back, in addition to lifting the reverse levers. So it's not that realistic. So what I've done is I've created something to more closely represent what happens in the real world. Let's have a look how we configure that. All the configurations are the same with the exception of the throttle decrease. And here I'm using 2 buttons. The first is the reverse lever itself, and the second is the area past the detent, which again is a button. Let's have a look at how we set that up and how we create 2 buttons for one function. So let's head back to our power management and throttle submenus, and in this case we're looking for throttle 1 decrease. I've cleared the previous mapping and now I'm going to map it to the 2 buttons. The way I'm going to do this is move the reverser up, push the throttle past detent, and now push the reverse lever down. Move the throttle and it's no longer scanning, and it will now validate and register both key presses. So to configure to more than one button, you hold one down and then press the other one before releasing the first button or buttons. Throttles working as expected. Now if I accidentally push the throttles all the way back, nothing happens. It doesn't go into reverse. The reverse lever, nothing happens. But when I do both, I now have reverse. And that's exactly the way it should be. This is more realistic and will prevent me from accidentally moving into reverse whilst flying. As mentioned before, there are other ways to configure this, but I found this the simplest and easiest way to do it. So that's my first stab at setting reverse thrusters in Microsoft Flight Simulator for the default airliners. And as I mentioned earlier, I'll be following it up with another video at a later stage looking at the props. I am aware there's a beta out for FSUIPC, but I've deliberately avoided that. Microsoft Flight Simulator is a modern piece of software, and I don't expect to have to buy third-party add-ons to achieve what I want. And we're still waiting for Honeycomb to issue the drivers for the Bravo Throttle Quadrant. I'll keep you updated. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you found this useful and informative. Catch you again soon. Take care. Bye for now.